Broadcasting from the Any Hour Services podcast studios, I'm your host, Mike Wilson, and you're here for another episode of Who's in the House. Stay tuned. Who's in the House is a series where we meet the men and women who help us keep our electrical, plumbing, heating, and air conditioning systems running, the tradespeople that help us keep our homes safe and comfortable. Today, I'm joined by Corbin Cassingham. How you doing, man?
Doing well.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
For those that are listening or watching, go ahead and introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do here at Any Hour Services.
So my name's Corbin. As you said, I do heating, ventilation, air conditioning. I'm a service technician. Was that it?
Yeah, that was good.
Perfect.
That was exactly what I asked for. I didn't know how long you were gonna go in there. I think it's funny. Sometimes people are like, "What does HVAC stand for?" Do you always introduce it as heating, ventilation, air conditioning, or do you bust out with HVAC sometimes?
I try to say heating, ventilation, and air conditioning.
Do you think that in your experience out in the field, do you think there are a lot of people that still don't quite, when they hear HVAC, they might not know what it means, but do you think they understand that that's their furnace and air conditioner, or no?
Oh, that's a good question.
They call me a good question asker.
I would say it's about 50%.
50%?
Both ways, yeah.
Because sometimes, especially with us being in so close to the trades, we've got that jargon that we use, and HVAC, I hear it so much that we just make the assumption that people know what that means, but they don't, obviously. Where are you from?
I am from Spanish Fork, Utah.
Spanish Fork, Utah. Born and raised?
Fork. Yeah, born and raised.
Did I say Spanish Fork?
No, I did.
Oh, okay.
I was just adding that in there.
Well, I grew up in the South, and so sometimes without me recognizing it, a Southern draw or a Southern enunciation will come out. I'll be dropping G's left and right on my ing words, and so I don't know. So Spanish Fork, that doesn't sound too bad, but I didn't know if I accidentally said it. So born and raised?
Yes, sir.
Have you lived for any extended period of time outside of that area, or has that always kind of been your home?
I have been all over the world.
All over the world? Yeah,
I've lived in a lot of crazy places for sure.
How? What's the craziest place you've lived?
The craziest place I've lived, I guess, stayed or lived. Lived was Okinawa.
Well, you were alive in all those places, right?
Yeah, I was alive in all those places. I guess
we'll say you lived there.
Yeah, okay.
Unless it was a little vacation. I can see it visiting versus live. If you were there for more than, a couple of weeks, I'll say you lived there for a while. How's that?
So the craziest place I've lived by a long shot was Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Military?
Yep.
Awesome. It sounded like you started to say Okinawa.
Yeah, so I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. That was
Really?
my first duty station, yep.
That's awesome. So how long were you there?
A year.
A year. Well, so you started out, you were going to say the craziest place was Okinawa, but then you changed it to Afghanistan.
After you kind of determined what living, how long because I was in Afghanistan almost a year, I guess, thinking back on it.
Okay. Well, since they were the same amount of time, they still were anyway, doesn't matter. So what was crazy about Okinawa? Because Afghanistan, we all understand the, the fighting and the, things that were going on over there. Sure. What was going on in Okinawa?
Just foreign language, foreign culture, architecture, the jungle, the spiders, the cockroaches.
But you were in Okinawa for military service?
Yes.
Well, okay. Well, let's go there. Tell everyone about what branch in the military, your history there.
So I did 10 years in the Marine Corps.
Awesome. That's great. When did you? Well, okay then. All right. We'll get back to the military service. Let's just start back when you were in high school and growing up in Spanish Fork, Irish brogue, I guess they're Spanish. I don't know. I'm horrible at accents. Anyway, so when you were in Spanish Fork in high school, what did you think you were going to do when you grew up, or what did you want to be?
I always thought I'd be a dentist.
Really?
I wanted to be a dentist, and I always thought I'd end up being a dentist, yeah.
How come?
Just because the dentists that I'd met, I remember going down to play down in Wolf Hollow. I don't know if you know where that's at, over in Spanish Fork.
I may have been there, but I don't know.
It was this really cool little ravine type deal that a dentist had put together, like a play area. There was a bunch of little playhouses, and there's a stream bed going through it, a waterfall, and it was just this cool little like playland that he'd put together for kids. And I remember thinking like, man, I want to have that guy's money. And I eventually found out like who he was, what he did, and all that stuff. And he was a dentist. His name was Tom Sorensen.
That's cool.
And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a dentist.
Was he ever your dentist?
He was.
He was.
Yeah, he was.
Is that how you found out about this playland in the mountains?
No. My cousins actually lived very close to that, probably a block or so away from it. And I think they're the ones that kind of took me there the first time.
Showed you the place. You were like, this is dope. I got to meet this dentist.
Yeah.
And then you like go in like, I just need a checkup. Hey, tell me about this like playland that you built.
Yeah. Well, not so much like that. I actually ended up going there with like my mom just took me into the dentist.
It was coincidence.
Coincidence, yeah.
That's awesome.
But then after I met him, I'd kind of asked him about it, of course, in the dentist office. And then the next time we were down there playing, I had to go. I'm like, oh, let's go talk to him. I know him. He's my dentist. All right. Take my friends up there. He had this sweet Ferrari in the garage. He had like a Porsche 911. Like he did well.
Huh.
And I remember thinking like, oh yeah, I want to be like this guy.
There you go. So you wanted to be a dentist. What age were you when you were like, okay, you made the connection with dentist?
Oh man, it's another good question, Mike.
Here's
I don't
the
really
thing.
know. Maybe 12.
We're not gonna like fact check you on this. So like, if you get too hung up, you can just give an age, and if it's close,
I think
everybody
maybe
will believe it.
10, 12, something like that.
So okay, then wanted to be a dentist. Go through high school. When did that change at all? When you were in high school, as far as like dentist. Now that I'm like getting a little older, I don't want to do that. Or was it always through high school dentist?
I was pretty set on it. The deterring factor, I guess you would say, is grades. I wasn't the most studious in high school. Like I had the potential to do well. I just a lot of times didn't want to be in school. I'd rather be duck hunting with my friends or riding my dirt bike or
gotcha.
So, and I started thinking like, man, if I'm going to do this, I need to buckle down and get it together and start putting my grades together.
And did you ever buckle down?
Ish. We're going to go with no.
Okay. Fair enough. So then, when you decided that, dentistry, because of the schooling connection, wasn't what you wanted to do, where did your mind start going then as far as like what you wanted to do?
I didn't really know. I remember being a senior and thinking like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then, I don't know, a lot of events happened that year. But yeah, I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? I knew that I didn't have the discipline to come out of high school and go directly into college. And I didn't want to get caught up in the whole college party and in debt and all this nonsense.
Sure.
So I didn't really know. So I'm kind of lucky. Well, I remember, it seems like late my junior year, one of the Marine Corps recruiters came and started talking to me. And that kind of just changed it. Because, they present it as this big, beautiful, which don't get me wrong, there's a lot of awesome things that you get to do in the Marine Corps. It's not always what the recruiter makes it out to be, but I remember him talking about like them paying for college and having the GI Bill and getting to see the world, and all those things were very appealing to me. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds perfect. It's like kind of a time filled during that, and then hopefully by the time I get done with that, I've got the discipline to go to school, and so I was pretty lucky to realize like I wasn't the most disciplined kid.
So the recruiter that came in, was it like a job fair day, or was he just like wandering the halls looking for guys that might need to buckle down and like, hey, you look like you'd be a good fit?
He actually was referred to me by one of my best friends at the time. His name was Sean Frazier.
Okay. And
the recruiter had been talking to him, and he was actually signed up and was going to join. He was in the delayed entry program and all that stuff, and he referred him to me, and he actually told me about it too. He's like, hey, I've been thinking about going in the Marine Corps and all this stuff, and I hope you don't mind, but, I told Staff Sergeant Hill to come talk to you that you might be, a guy that would go or whatever. And I was like, where'd you get that idea? That's really, it was just random. And they have what's called a buddy program. Like when you go in, you can go in with a friend and you go through basic together and all that stuff. And so that was the plan initially. And then he ended up deciding he didn't want to go after he was the one that initiated it. And I went.
Once you, when you sign up in air quotes, like, how do you back out? I thought once you like decide you're going, like,
so there's
you're going.
There's definitely different steps to by the time you like actually ship. So part of it, there's a program that's called the delayed entry program, and usually that's if you're not 18 or something like that. They wait till you turn 18. There is people that have gone in, like say you graduated high school, you're still 17 because of your whenever you're
sure.
Then your parents could sign for you, and then you would still be able to ship. But a lot of times.
So is it kind of like a letter of intent? Like, hey, here's what I plan on doing, but you haven't like shipped out, and so you've got to change. When you're a teenager, you've got the opportunity to change your mind a little bit more.
Yep, that's a good way to describe it. And they know too. Like obviously, the recruiters have been through it before, and all that. They know sometimes like people are like, it's a big decision, it's a big commitment. So
is what was appealing to you the travel the world, the adventure, like
all of it,
paying for college, all that stuff was like, man, this sounds like the best opportunity.
That, and also boot camp. Like I remember seeing on TV like different boot camp stuff, whatever, and I always thought like, oh, that'd be awesome to try. I think I could do it. Or I wrestled all through school and was very into sports and physically fit, gym rat totally.
So you saw it as like a challenge to like test your physical and like endurance, like, yeah, I'm tough, I can do that. Yeah. See, I was the opposite. I was like when I saw boot camps and stuff, I'm like, oh man, whew. Push-ups, that seems hard.
You know what's funny? I always thought the same thing, like, oh no, push-ups. They don't do as much push-ups as
really.
It's mostly pull-ups. Pull-ups are way worse than push-ups.
I agree with you. I look way more silly trying to do a pull-up than I do trying to do a push-up. I can at least bang out some push-ups. But why is that? Do they explain to you, here's why we do these particular exercises?
Yeah, so pull-ups is your entire, that's lifting your entire body mass.
Yeah.
So if you can lift your entire body mass, that's more, push-ups are obviously like a strength building, but it's not as much core building as pull-ups. Pull-ups require abs and obliques and like your whole core, shoulders and everything.
Maybe I've been doing pull-ups wrong. I always thought pull-ups were like your arms and maybe some shoulders. Like,
so if you go really, really close under grip, then it's going to be mostly just arms and biceps.
Okay.
Which is, don't get me wrong, like you'll get some big buys from doing, but they're definitely a lot harder that way. If you spread your arms out, go over grip, you're using like your biceps, your back, you're using a lot more muscle. So, and they kind of train you.
But see, going through the motions, I'm sitting here, I'm like, and maybe it's because I don't have abs, but like I don't feel those contracting. I don't know. I'm not arguing it. I'm in my mind. I'm just. Anyway, all right, Sarah, keep going.
No, that was it. That was the end.
that was the end of the story. Okay, well, that was a good ending. Okay, so you get recruited. Where was your boot camp? Talk me through that.
It was in San Diego.
Really? How did you like that? Was that a cool place to do boot camp?
Yeah, I'd never been. So at that point, the only place I'd been outside of Utah was Wyoming. We have family in Wyoming, and I'd traveled through there, but that was about it. So getting on a plane and traveling to, oh no, I guess that's not true. Take it back. I had been on a plane out to the East Coast with my grandma.
Where at?
We went out to Michigan, where she was from. She has a sister that lived out there. And then from there, we traveled to Ohio, Pennsylvania. We actually went under the Detroit River into Canada. Cool trip. Yeah.
That's cool.
That was cool.
Okay, so go to San Diego, go through boot camp. How is it? You were there's reserves, and then is it
active duty?
Active duty. Okay, so you're active duty. So do you go straight from boot camp to deployment, or do you do boot camp and then come back to Utah and wait for your like where you're being deployed to?
Yes and no. So in between, after boot camp or basic training, they'll send you to Marine combat training, which is a little different. So in I would say most branches of the military, but in the Marine Corps specific, if you're not infantry, then you go to combat training. If you're infantry, you go to SOI, which is School of Infantry. They train you, infantry tactics and patrolling and all that stuff. And you get a lot of the same thing in combat training. It's just, it's a little different. Probably a lot of people would agree, a little less hazing in the...
In infantry?
Those infantry, no, in the other side, in combat training.
Got it.
Those infantry guys, they get it handed to them.
What were you, infantry, or were you the other side?
No, I was motor transport.
Motor transport.
Yeah, so I went in combat training.
Is motor transport, like, do you learn the mechanics and like do that type of thing, or is it just like they teach you how to drive and operate the equipment, or is it all encompassing?
Yeah, so you go basic training, then Marine combat training, and then after that you go into MOS school, or military occupational specialty training. And then you get trained. That's a formal school. You get trained in whatever your job is for the military, Marine Corps, whatever it may be. And I think they're mostly structured the same. And so in between that, you get leave. So you go boot camp, combat training, you get leave. Like that's kind of like you're finished with that big first portion, your basic training or whatever it may be. And then you go, I think I got like 14 days leave, I want to say, something like that. And then after that, got all my stuff together, and they sent me out to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, which was actually an Army base, but they've got a couple of Marine schools there, which one of them was military police. So the military police and the Marine Corps go to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri as well, and then the motor transport guys go there, and they teach you, just like you said, mechanics, driving skills, different variants of vehicles, because in Motor T, there's it covers a broad range of different vehicles that you operate.
So do they send you there because you're not quite trained enough to go on like full deployment, or is it that they didn't have somewhere to deploy you yet?
The Marine Corps trains you, and then they retrain you, and they train you again, they train you and train. I mean, you never stop. It is a continuous. If you're not in theater, is what they call it, or overseas on like an actual deployment in show of force or in an actual conflict or whatever it may be, you're training. Always.
So, all right. So you're doing that, and then then do you go to Okinawa, or like?
So
did Okinawa come before Afghanistan?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens next?
So MOS school. Graduated MOS school. Man, I can't really remember the fine details of the timeline.
It's okay, because once we have it captured, you'll have this record for posterity forever. So when like the grandkids come and be like, "How did you get in the military?" Be like, "Listen to episode 70 of Who's in the House," and that tells you the story.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's pretty close though. So graduated occupational training, went over to Okinawa. So when you're in occupational training, you usually get to pick. They call it your dream sheet, right? So you say on your dream sheet you want to go West Coast because they've got duty stations on the West Coast or the East Coast, and obviously the Army and Air Force and Navy and all that stuff are totally different. But the Marine Corps generally has the West Coast stations, duty stations, East Coast duty stations, and then overseas duty stations. So I put West Coast first because I'm from Utah, East Coast, overseas. Where did they send me? East Coast, overseas, then the East Coast, then the West Coast. Well, which is probably why they call it a dream sheet.
It's like tell me where you want to go most, and that's like your last one. Yeah. Have you known guys that like put it in reverse order to like try and?
No, I think at that point you don't know what to. You don't
just
know.
Do whatever.
Yeah, you just
follow orders. Okay, so where I wanted to go with like, why did they send you to Okinawa? Like, what was going on in that area that the Marines needed to be there?
So we've always maintained presence in Okinawa since was it World War II?
Okay.
So, and I actually got to go on while I was there, Battle Sites tour, which is pretty cool. They have Marine Corps has a single Marines program, so different areas they have different activities and tours and different things that they take you on to kind of keep you occupied, keep you out of trouble in your free time and all that stuff. And I went on a Battle Sites tour and got to see all the caves and different stuff from World War II. It was fascinating. Like, and some of the stuff, like, I don't know, I can't even imagine. It's funny, you run into older veterans and they're always like, oh man, thank you for your service. I can't even imagine what you guys do today. And I'm thinking the total opposite. I'm like, holy cow, I could not have done, there's no way I could have done. I mean, obviously we would have been forced to,
Sure.
but that's wild. That Battle Sites tour was unbelievable. But so, sorry, off topic.
No, it's on topic because it's about you. Okay, so you're in Okinawa, and so you were just there kind of maintaining presence, training, like, you know, continuing that, staying ready. And then, but you said then you got brought back to East Coast.
No, so while I was in Okinawa, we actually went on a float. They call it like a Westpac because it's the Western Pacific. You get on ship and you go tour around different islands and all that stuff, and it is kind of in show of force. So a little bit of heat at that time, and I can't remember the exact what happened with the exact conflict, and it wasn't like we were at war or anything like that, but we did deploy to Korea. I spent 30 days in Korea in show of force in South Korea. It was Camp Mujuk, like right there. And
Interesting.
Yeah, I got like a service deployment ribbon and all that stuff for that because it was actually like an exercise, like in show of force to kind of back off North Korea at the time. So I hit on that Western Pacific float. We hit Guam, Thailand, Singapore, and Korea. I was in Korea for 30 days. It rained for like 28 straight. Miserable.
Wow.
Yeah, it was miserable.
It's like that scene in Forrest Gump when he's like describing all the different rains.
Yeah.
So when you're doing all of this traveling, again, like, forgive if these are ignorant questions, but when you are in the military like that, I'm assuming you being in the military is your passport. Do you have to like have a passport to like get in and out of all these places?
Nope, you're exactly right. So, and we don't even go like all the travel until there is different areas that you travel where you take like civilian transport, but the majority of the time it's all military transport. So the ships and the trucks and the planes and everything, it's all military. So they don't require you to have a passport.
Gotcha. Okay. So you do your, was it a tour?
Yeah,
like,
that's what we call it. Exactly. Yep. Tour.
So you do your tour there and then you come back to the States, or you go from there to?
Nope. From there, I went to North Carolina,
Okay.
Jacksonville, North Carolina, which was Camp Lejeune.
Gotcha.
And started on a pre-deployment. Like we knew prior to that, like even in basic training, so just to back up a little bit and kind of set the timeline, I was a senior during 9/11. I remember coming out of the parking lot and talking to one of my friends. They're like, oh, we're going to war and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, right. I didn't really
Were you signed up at that time?
No, wasn't signed up at the time. Had talked to the recruiter, and after that, it was kind of between, like we discussed, all the stuff that was attractive about the military for me. That kind of was the nail in the coffin. I'm like, okay.
So you had like a strong sense of patriotism. You wanted to do your duty.
Sure, yeah.
To like go over. Were your parents worried at all and try and like talk you out of it?
My mom started crying. I remember I just sat her beside herself. I remember the first time you even brought it up, and she's like, why would you want to do that? Yeah, and then it took a little, like, after
what did you tell? Like, how do you, as a teenager, I'm trying to imagine my son as a senior, like coming home and trying to articulate why he wants to, sign up and go to war. So like, what did that sound like?
I just told her I'm going in the Marine Corps. So I was 17 at the time.
Okay.
So my parents had 17 years of me. They knew I'm kind of a headstrong like once I have my mind set on something, you're not going to talk me out of it.
Fair enough.
And they pretty much knew, like, and so like even when I just told her that, like for me, like if my kids came and said that, I'd be like, yeah, okay, we'll see what you, because there's a lot of, by the time you actually ship and go, but sure. I think my mom knew me well, and the first time I said that, she took it at full value, like he's really doing this.
Huh.
So yeah, and she was upset. She wanted me to stay. She wanted me to go on a mission. She wanted me to go to college, all the things that you want for your kids to be successful and have a, fulfilled life. And I'd planned on going on a mission at the time. And I even talked to my bishop, and I feel really strongly about this. I feel really strongly about this. I don't know what to do. And he said, I can't tell you. You'll have to pray about it and do what your heart tells you. And I did. And I ended up going in the Marine Corps. But
Cool. So you come back here. You're in North Carolina. What happens after that? You said you were training for or doing pre-deployment.
pre-deployment, yeah. So we
got off because you were like, you started saying pre-deployment, and you like
that's
said,
gonna happen.
well,
Mike.
we
Sorry,
knew.
I'm a yellow personality, and I'll be.
No, you're fine, because I go all over the place as well, and sometimes it'll be real random where I'm like, oh, here's how we got a mile off track, and then I kind of try and bring it back. So no, don't worry about it. We don't have a time. This is long format content here. So okay, so you're. At what point did you know that you were getting deployed to Afghanistan?
Afghanistan was a lot later. So my first deployment was Iraq. So I did 3 to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan.
When you say 3, how long is a typical deployment?
In the Marine Corps, they're anywhere 6 to 9 months.
Okay.
So.
Got it. So you did 3 deployments to Iraq, but those came after your pre-deployment in North Carolina.
Yeah, so you do pre-deployment training, which builds you up to, like, they go through different exercises, and then you get taught about, foreign language, religion, geography, history, agriculture. I mean, they teach you everything, and then you go through the, what would you call it, like combat tactics and different, you know what I mean? Like, there's different operating procedures in different areas, and so you go through all that pre-deployment training, and then you ship out, and they fly you into Kuwait, stop in Kuwait, and then from there it's military. So your first flight into Kuwait is civilian. Like, it's a civilian, it's World Airlines. And it seems like we flew out of California. I'm trying to think. Not 29, I can't think. So from California anyway to Maine, Bangor, Maine to Leipzig, Germany to, man, I wonder if I'm supposed to be saying all that.
I didn't know.
I don't know. I hope I'm not in trouble right now. So anyway, Leipzig,
Let
Germany.
me know if you...
I don't know. But Leipzig, Germany, then Kuwait. And Kuwait forward is military. So up until that point, it's all like civilian transportation, World Airlines, and all that. And then from out of Kuwait, then you're kind of technically in the danger zone, right? So then it's military and like escorted flights with combat ready helicopters, so on.
When I think of like military units flying, I envision, the big aircraft where you're sitting on the side and you're like all in your gear and stuff, like getting ready to jump out of a plane. Yeah, exactly. So at what point does travel become like that?
Kuwait.
Okay, so from there, like you say battle ready, so that means you're ready for anything.
Jacket, Kevlar weapon. You're in like condition. I think they call it condition 4. So condition 4 is a weapons condition, and it's like you've got rounds at that point. You got your magazine in, but you don't have one in the chamber. And condition 1 is in the chamber, like you're ready to go.
So all right, so you go and you do a deployment to Iraq, and then do you have to do pre-deployment every time? Like, so you go, you come back, and then like do pre-deployment, and then go and...
Yeah, so you do post-deployment too. Like, they'll actually take you through, they had us go through counseling and all kinds of stuff, because they knew, like, especially, so when I was in Iraq, it was in 2004 during the Battle of Phantom Fury in Fallujah. It was
It's intense.
It was intense for sure. So we come back from that, and they know guys are going to have PTSD and different things. We ended up losing a lot of guys over there, and so they'd send you through post-deployment. And post-deployment is a series of classes that kind of help you readjust from the combat zone back into civilian life. Be a dad and a husband, and don't go crazy and steal a tank and drive down the freeway. And
sure,
because I think somebody did that.
Did they?
Seems like I saw that on TV. Yeah.
Huh.
Wild.
You say coming back and being a father and family, like, are you still single at this point? Are you married? Like, do you have a family? So
I got married right before my first deployment.
Okay.
Funny story.
Let's hear it.
I came into the barracks, checked into the barracks. When each duty station you go to, you'll have an escort where you first get there and somebody to meet you, and they kind of take you through, show you around, show you the barracks, and show you around base and so on and so forth, different areas that are like the essentials that you're going to need to know where to go and where your work station is at and all that. So I get all that done. You check in different sections because they've got like the different S shops. And I know that sounds like jargon to you, which it is, but they're like S1 is where they deal with pay and all the kind of admin type stuff, and then they had S2 and S3 and S4 and so on. So you check into all those different areas, you check in with the command, a sergeant major and so on, and then they'll take you and say, okay, we're going to take you to the barracks, let you put your stuff away, change over, and depending on when you get there, they'll have you go back to your shop and you work the day, or you're like get there on a Friday or something and they're like, okay, you got the weekend, blah blah blah. Overseas, you have to have an NCO, which is an E4, a corporal or above, to escort you off the actual installation. So I was like, oh no, my weekend's ruined, right? Like I'm not going. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know a corporal. I didn't know anything. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna be stuck here my whole weekend, right? So I check in. They take me to the barracks. I had laundry. I remember because we were in transit, a couple different places. So I wanted to get all my laundry done, everything put away, my room squared away, cleaned up. So I'm like prepped and ready to start the new week. And so I'm doing that, and I go into the laundry room and I'm doing my laundry, and in walks a female Marine. And I remember thinking, and like immediately, holy smoke. And trying not to be obvious that I'm like looking at her, right? Like you got to be discreet. So doing my laundry, and I'm like, oh, man, I can't just like look, like I'm not going to be the guy like staring at her, you know? So I'm like doing my laundry, trying to ignore her, and I look over again and I'm like, holy cow. So, and change laundry, whatever, come back. She comes back this like almost the same time as me, and we're switching our laundry out because she was doing laundry too. And so they have like a group style laundry room, and that's, you know what I mean? They call it a common area because everybody uses the same laundry facilities.
Sure.
And so the second time I may have not been as discreet. Like I'm changing over my laundry loads, and I kind of like leaned back and looked, and she caught me, like boom, busted me right in the eyes looking at her. I was like, oh no. And I could feel my face turning red. I was like, no. So I was like trying to hurry and get out of there, right? And she comes right over immediately. Hey, how's it going?
Like really nice?
Yeah, nice, but like I don't know. She was very confident. Huh? I mean, she was a sergeant of Marines. Sure. She was super confident, and just like she knew. I mean, she could probably tell by looking at me that I'm a brand new boot, is what they call it, the new guys. So she's like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm Sergeant Cruz," and I'm like, "Oh no!" Like, it's nice to meet you, Sergeant. I'm Private First Class PFC Cassingham. And so ever since that day, so come to find out, she worked directly in the same shop as me. So she asked me, she's like, "Hey, I'm Sergeant Cruz. Nice to meet you." She's like, you new here? And I said, "Yeah, I just got here." And she's like, "Oh, well, what section are you with or whatever?" Because the barracks was obviously the same squadron. What they have, the squadron of Marines in the same barracks, right? So she knew I was with her squadron somehow, but she didn't know what section I was with. I'm like, "Oh, I'm with Motor T and Utility." She's like, "Oh, so am I." She's like, "Well, I'm your new sergeant." And I was like, no.
It would have been better if it was like a Top Gun moment, you know, where like you have that awkward interaction at the laundry, and then you're standing in formation waiting for your sergeant to show up. And like,
that happened. That actually absolutely happened. So she's like, "Well, I'm your new sergeant," and all that stuff, right? And I'm like, "Oh, okay, well," but she was utility. So I didn't understand at that point like how our section kind of interacted and where she would be in accordance with like chain of command and stuff. So I go and this was on a Friday, so I was lucky. I got like portion of a day and checked out for the weekend. Monday, go to formation, stand out in front of our building where they told me to report and stuff, right? And kind of getting to know some of the other guys and all that. And they're like, one of our corporals will usually put us in formation before the platoon sergeant gets there, and like actually goes over the briefing for the day, like the, you know, whatever we got planned for that day. So they're like, "Hey, go ahead and form it up, get in formation and stuff." So we're standing there at parade rest, just like at ease. And he calls us to attention, and here comes Sergeant Cruz to take over the formation. I was like, no, this can't be happening.
That's awesome.
And as she comes, like she kind of looks over at me, and I then, like, I've gained quite a bit of bearing at this point in my life, but then like I couldn't, if I don't know. I feel my face going red again. I'm like, no, it was embarrassing all the way around. So I just avoided her at that point at all cost. And she ended up calling me out on it one day. She was in charge of like the tool room, and they call it OVE gear, like gear you'd have to check out to like say like a tow chain, tow bar, depending on what you're doing with like the vehicles. So we'd go into the OVE room and check out different like road cones or whatever, depending on what we were doing. And I'd have to go to her and sign it out. So I just like wouldn't even make eye contact. I just like, proper greeting of the day, because that's required. Good afternoon, Sergeant. And then that was it. And sign out my tools and have a good day. And I was out, no eye contact, just bailing. And she called me out one day. She's like, hey, how come you're so awkward? You can talk to me, She's like, it's okay, or, you could. And I could feel my face going red again. She knew, like, I thought she was hot. I'm sure she was used to it. She's very beautiful. Anyway, got called out, and I was like, you know what? I'm not. So I was like, well, I don't know. I'm kind of shy, I guess. I don't. And she's like, have a good day, Cass. That's what everybody called me, because Cassingham was apparently too long. So everybody, have a good day, Cass. Because she knew we're like just punking me. And I'm like, I'm not going out like that. I'm not going out like no chump. So, they have what's called fraternization. Like certain ranks, like enlisted, aren't supposed to date officers, and E4 and below are, you can kind of like intermediate. Like they don't encourage it. Obviously, they kind of discourage it, but they're not gonna, like, you won't get in trouble. But like under E4 and above E4, that's fraternization, because at that point they're a non-commissioned officer, an NCO. So we weren't supposed to like date or anything like that, right? And that's why it was awkward, because I was like, there's nothing, I can't even ask her out on, I can't do anything at this point. I shouldn't even be flirting with her. I can't do anything. So I would just avoid it, right? So we had this little bus. I forgot to mention that station was a portion of the air wing. So we had like a big flight line, they called it, where the jets would come in and out and helicopters and all that stuff. And we were on the other side of that.
Gotcha.
So I was with the Marine Tactical Air Control Squadron 18.
Gotcha.
And then the motor team utility section. So we'd have to take a bus around the flight line to the barracks after work. We'd get on the bus every morning, and it'd take us to our workshop. And so we get on the bus, and I kind of like tactically sat right behind her, right against the window, and she was up against the window. Once we get going and people were talking, their music's going, all that stuff, I lean in between the window and the seat, and I said, hey, Sergeant Cruz. And she's like, who was that, Cass? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, when are you gonna let me take you out on a date? And she, like, I was taking a huge risk here, right? Like, this is, I in no way, shape, or form should have. I remember thinking, like, oh man, are you really gonna do this? And she's like, oh really, Devil Dog? So Devil Dog is a nickname that we got in Germany, I think, Battle of Bella Wood. It was the bloodiest battle of all time, and forget who it was. Dang it, my Marine Corps history is slipping me. Right. Anyway, so we got the nickname Teufelhunden, which in German means devil dog, because the Marines were so fiercely fighting the Germans and so on and so forth. So when you get called a devil dog by a senior rank, it's kind of like you're being put in your place, almost like they call you, like, remember your place, like, you're a devil dog, you're a Teufelhunden. And she's like, oh really, devil dog? And I was like, oh crap. Why did I do that? And that was about it. She's like, oh really, devil dog? You think you can just ask out a sergeant? And she's like, good to go, don't worry. And I was like, oh no, I'm so dead now. And I didn't say another word the whole bus ride. So we get off the bus, and I just like take off right to my room, right? Go to my room, and I'm changing my clothes. And we had a couple of females with us. One was a Lance Corporal. So Lance Corporal Clarkowski, her roommate, comes to my room, knocks on the door, and she's like, hey, you got to get back in uniform. Go report into Sergeant Cruz. I was like, oh, I'm toast. So I'm like, all right, good. I'm like, did she say anything? Is she like, I'm trying to get, whatever details, figure out what's going on. And she's like, no, she just said you got to be in uniform, go report into her. So I'm like, crap. Put my uniform back on, go knock on her door. And report in means like position of attention, proper greeting of the day. Here is, reporting is ordered. So I knock on her door, stand in the position of attention, say, good afternoon, Sergeant PFC Cassingham, reporting is ordered. And she like pokes her head out the hall, make sure nobody's there. She's like, come in. go in her room. She's like, all right, this is what's going to happen. She's like, go to your room, change over. And I'm like, wait. I'm like, why did you do that to me? Why did you do that to me? I was losing. Like, I thought I was in so much trouble. And she's like, well, we got to be discreet. She's like, I can't date you. She's like, we're not supposed to, you can't ask me out on a date. We can't let anybody know. So she's like, so this is what's going to happen. Go to your room, change your clothes, put on whatever. And she's like, come to the E-Club. She's like, I will be there exactly this time in a taxi. Just don't say anything. Get in the taxi and we'll leave. I'm like, okay. So she goes, and that's how it started.
Wow.
We started dating, and we kept it professional at work. Like, nobody knew we were 100% good to go, sergeant. Yes. No, position of whatever I had to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so as you're telling this story, now that I know you both are, in the Marines, when did you guys get deployed together or separate deployments? Like from that point, like how does the military deal with that? Like,
so typically, depending on your, I think airmen, like different jobs in the aircraft field, you would have a 5-year contract. Just because certain jobs, the school takes longer, so your actual contract in the fleet, Marine Corps, would be longer. But the other portion is it's a 4-year contract. Majority of military contracts is a 4-year contract. Well, she was near the end of hers. Like, she was very close to like getting out of the Marine Corps, and she got out, went back to California and all that. So, but we never did deploy together. She went to, like, while we were there, she got put on, I forget what it's called, but she went to Okinawa. But I stayed back, like main body. So we never did deploy together or anything. But
okay, so military, how long did you serve?
10 years.
10 years. And after you got out of the military, what like did you guys continue to date? Did you get married while you guys were, or while you were active duty?
No, so I got to add one portion.
Okay.
We almost got in trouble for it. And my fault. The entire time, like, we were professional, nobody knew that we were dating or anything. Do you know what I mean? Until right before she left. So right before she leaves, she
gave her a big hug and people saw?
No, not even that. She had a going away party, right? And they put together this big card for her, and everybody signed it and all that stuff. Well, I was one of the last ones to sign it before they gave it to her, because I was in her direct workstation. Like, they handed it out to everybody, all that, right? And they signed a big card. We had this big beach party and all this stuff. And then I forget exactly what I wrote in there, but it was not discreet. It wasn't like, but it was enough to know, like our staff NCOs knew that something was going on. So we got called into the office and talked to about it. But she had like a week left, but I had my whole career left.
Sure.
So basically they're focusing on me. They're like, you can't, like, you're still held to the same standard as everybody else. Don't think that you're getting away with this just because she's about to get out of it. Like, anyway, so I got a talking to. And that's about where it ended, but luckily.
Well, there you go. All right. So, you get out of service. Is it your, what's it called when you end your service? You're discharged?
It's end of active status. So when you end active duty, usually, depending on I think always, you go into inactive reserve. You have like a 6-month inactive reserve, but we all call it the acronym EAS. It's your end of active service.
Does inactive reserve mean that, like, if something really went down, you could get called back up? Got it. Okay, so what did you do after that? Now I want to start understanding how you end up in the trades. Did any of that begin when you were in the military?
Probably not. Not really.
Okay, so you get out of the military.
So I did get introduced to air conditioning and heating and air and all that stuff because the utility section. So I was motor transport. And on deployment, we would haul fuel to fill generators, which in turn ran air conditioning and the air control shelters. That's what that unit was. It was an air control unit. So they had these little shelters, 10 and 20-foot shelters, to control and communicate with aircraft. And they were ran by generator and radar and all that stuff, right? So we had the radar that we'd set up, which was ran by generators, and then the shelters and all that stuff. And then they all had air conditioning hooked to them. So we had utility guys that we would kind of run around with and help out on different things, and then they would come with us and help us with our daily tasks or whatever. So I did get introduced to it there.
Got it.
And then kind of capitalized on that in on one of my tours. One of my good friends, Josh Day, who's from Anchorage, Alaska. He was they called it a reefer tech there, but worked on air conditioners.
Sure.
I mean, him got really close. We'd go to the gym together every day, and I'd go and help him do his PMCS, like preventative maintenance checks and services and all that stuff. And so that's kind of where I got introduced to the concepts. Then getting out of the military, they put you through, again, like another training, right? But they called it separations training. So they would put you through classes, and you got to, oh my heavens, my vocabulary is terrible. What is it where they would like test you for what your strengths are?
Like your aptitude test?
Yes,
or
exactly.
Like
That's the word I was looking to, an aptitude test. So you take an aptitude test and a bunch of stuff, and then they'd put together like, okay, this is a career plan for you exiting, like this is an exiting strategy for you to go back into the civilian sector.
Yep.
So, and I was geared towards the medical field. I still had it in the back of my mind, dentistry, but I'd kind of switched. I'm like, you know what, I'd rather go like nursing or something like that. And I think what changed it is mouths are gross.
Yes, they are.
So that, and then I had heard somewhere that like postmen and dentists had like the highest suicide rates. So I was like, well, I don't want to do that.
Like the mailman?
Yeah, like the going postal.
Ah.
They do. They have like a high, but dentists do too, apparently.
Huh.
I don't know where that random knowledge. I store stuff, but I'll
I've
remember
heard that. Like medical,
I've
heard that like medical people had like a high, suicide rate, but I didn't know that like dentists like took the cake.
Yeah, dentist. Yeah.
Huh.
Take the cake, yeah.
Okay, so you were going to pursue medical. Progress me through how you end up like becoming aware of the trades as a career option.
Yeah, so I did pursue medical. Went through a complete nursing program. Was working as a nurse at Central Utah Veterans Home, and I'd been there for a couple years. And my brother Coulter, who works for the company, as you know, he's the one that kind of. So, obviously, there's a story behind that too. So I was working at Central Utah Veterans Home. I'd completed a nursing program, like so close to getting my RN certificate at the time as a registered nurse, and I actually ended up did getting that. And Coulter one day, so nursing in Utah is pretty saturated, pretty competitive. So to get into certain areas, surgery under physicians or in a specialty clinic or something like that, like you got to have a little experience and put together a resume. And so that's kind of what I was working on, just my experience putting together a resume. And as I was doing that, like it just wasn't panning out.
Just roadblocks.
Oh, well, not roadblocks, but I could not, prior to joining the Marine Corps, I was ironclad. Like you couldn't get me mad. You couldn't mess with like you couldn't excite. Like I was pretty just
even kill, like
even kill,
chill.
Yeah, super mellow. Now, like emotionally heightened. I'll cry in movies. I was so tough. Like now, I can't control. I don't know. I relate to a lot more stuff now. I think it happens as you get older anyway. But I couldn't separate the personal and professional, especially with veterans. I was working at a veterans home, like a long-term veterans home, and so like me and their families were just becoming like super close. And I had guys I was spending 9 hours a day with, and they're my heroes. They're heroes. Like
Sure.
some of their stories are unbelievable. Like these guys are like the untouchables. Like I hear their story, I'm just like, holy, Medal of Honor winners and Silver Cross and all this stuff. And they're now, like I'm helping them with their daily activities because they're old enough that they can't, complete function, and that's why they end up in the care facility. And so it was heavy. It was super heavy because a lot of them end up being terminal. Everybody dies.
Sure.
And it was just, I don't know. It was I wasn't wired I'm not wired for it. I just was like, I don't want to deal with this. I need something lighter. And Coulter is the one who, I was working, I had just gone from swing shift, just from graveyards to swing shift. And I'd work it straight through, like a 24-hour shift. So I had the extra day on the weekend. And he caught me like just changing shift. And he called.
Coulter did?
Yeah. And he called me and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I just got off work. I'm headed home. He's like, well, I'll meet you there. And I was like, okay. And if you know Coulter, he's always got something up his sleeve.
Sure.
He doesn't do anything without intent. So he meets me there, and I walk in, and I'm haggard. And just got off at 24 and in my scrubs and all that. And he just got off work, too. This is like 6 p.m., something like that. And he's fresh as could be. Happy and sitting at the bar joking with my kids, clean still. And he looks at me. He's like, what are you doing, bro? Like, he's king of call-outs for sure. Man, he's going to see this and just laugh. He's like, oh, thanks. But I'm like, well, I'm coming in to wash my hands. What do you mean? What are you doing? And he's like, no, what are you? He's like, after I wash my hands, he's like, come sit down. He's like, bro, you come work with me. He's like, look at you, you look terrible. You got bags under your eyes. You're putting weight on. You're ornery. He's like, come work with me. Let me just bring you in and take you on a tour, and you can see what we're doing, see what we're putting together here, see what's going on. If you don't like it, you can go back to what you're doing. But at the end, I'm going to tell you I told you so. So, all right, Coulter, here's you told me so. You got me. So I was like, no, I just went through all the schooling and, completed a nursing degree, and I'm not changing career paths now. He's like, I'm not saying you have to. He's like, but just come take a tour. Let me introduce you to some people. So he finally convinced me to come into one of our training meetings on a Tuesday.
So he was working at any hour at that point. Okay.
Yeah. And I think at that point, I think he was still in service.
Okay.
At that point. So I go in with, he was in service because I remember going sitting with them in the training meeting, like listening to the music, listening to Lincoln come up and speak, and seeing them throwing darts, seeing all the.
How long ago was this?
Oh, good question, Mike. You can't ask me memory questions because I don't know. I can't remember.
Well, I mean, like 3 years, 4 years. Like how long does it? How long do you think you've been here?
It seems like it was about. Oh man, it's longer than I thought because I went to school for 2 years after that.
Yep.
Like I had a portion of the Jabio left that I didn't use, and I left the meeting thinking like, okay, that's what I want to do. That's going to be awesome. And then went back to school for HVAC. So man, it had to have been 7 years ago, maybe.
Wow.
6 years ago.
So you come out of the meeting, what was it about the meeting that because you, like you say, you were doing the nursing thing and your guard was up at first. Didn't think that you were going to, come in and do this. How long had Coulter, are you older than Coulter or younger?
Older.
You're older than Coulter. How long had he been doing this?
I think only a couple years.
I think he'd been here
for 2-3 years, something like that.
So you come in, and when did your mind change?
Well, talking to him, like he kind of, even coming over, him telling me like, oh yeah, it's the camaraderie is, and I had, there's nothing that will ever compare to the Marine Corps, like the camaraderie and the people you meet and all that, but coming in here and seeing everybody getting together in that training room and they're talking and all that stuff, and like seeing it, just, I don't know, everything about it. I don't know. I can't point
similar.
Yeah, it just made me feel at home. Like I walked in there and I was just like, this is awesome. I want to be a part of this. Yeah, it felt very similar. Camaraderie, like the whole organization, everything, like walking through, and Marines are meticulous. Like we get inspected on everything and all that, but like the process and everything going on here, the uniforms and the uniform room and the cleaning and like everything that the company does and how it's structured and everything, I'm just like, oh man, this is about as close as I'm gonna get.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you say that you went back to school for HVAC, did you accept a job here first? Like how
No.
did it? So
No, I'd come in and I ended up talking to Wyatt. I remember sitting in Wyatt's office and talking to him. Wyatt wanted me to be a plumber.
really?
And I was like, no, I don't want to be a plumber. And he said, well, I don't have anything open in the other trades right now. And I said, that's okay. I'd like to do HVAC. I was intrigued by it, interested. I'm kind of a science geek anyway.
Sure.
And so I was like, well, I'm going to go to school, use the GI Bill. And by the time I finish, hopefully you guys have something that opens up. And he said, yeah, keep in contact. We'd love to have you, and so on and so forth.
So how long was it? How long were you in school before you?
Just barely under 2 years.
2 years. And then, so after that, you kept doing nursing. Did you go to school at night, or did you stop nursing and do schooling?
Initially, I started going to school at night, and that program that was brutal, not working out. So, and luckily the GI Bill, I had qualified for Chapter 33, which is like the main portion of the GI Bill, the Montgomery GI Bill. And there's like a housing allowance that comes with it. So they pay for your tuition, but then you get housing allowance for rent and all that stuff too. So I ended up just dropping out of nursing completely. I put in my 2 weeks. It was like one of the happiest days of my life. Even though I love that, I actually miss it big time. Like I miss the guys. I've gone over there a couple times because we don't live there too far from there.
Sure.
I've gone over and talked to some of the guys and the staff and stuff. But anyway.
So couple years, you finish your HVAC schooling, and then you come back and say, hey, do you have an opening yet?
So this worked out perfectly. I also have a couple of friends in the trades. Like I'm really good friends with Jason Tanner, which is part owner of Triple T, and Paul Casey owns HRC, and they were recruiting me pretty hard.
Got it.
So I was like, I don't know what to do. And I remember right before I graduated, it worked out so perfect. But Coulter calls me. He's like, hey, we got an opening. Come back in. We're going to take you to the meeting and interview and all that stuff. And so I was like, okay. I come back in, talk to Lincoln, talk to Troy. Jeremy gave me a formal offer. And I was like, I kind of sat on it for a little bit because I was like, well, I know I kind of have some options now. Like I'm certified, just got out of school. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go with NER. I'm not going to change. Anyway, so.
Well, let me stop you there real quick, because you say that you were, being recruited heavy by these other places. Why did you choose Any Hour over them?
A big reason was because obviously my brother's like, dude, are you kidding me? Why would you? He's like, you don't even know. He's just trust me. He told me that and still does. We talk all the time, every day, just about we talk. And he tells me all the time.
He's still trying to convince you to stay?
No, he's not trying to convince me to stay, but he always just says, just trust me. Just trust me. Trust the process. Just trust me. Because he'll give me little tips and pointers on how to deal with scenarios with customers, but just trust me. Just trust me. So I trust him. I've always trusted him, but.
So it was like off of the strength of your brother's faith in the company, you went with that, or was there?
And there was a lot more to it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because there's people that are either thinking about going into the trades, or they're in the trades, and what I want to try and help them understand is that one, going into the trades is a great career choice, but your success can be amplified if you find the right place to build your career.
Sure.
And so that's what I'm trying to figure out is because you had a couple of different paths that you could have taken all in the trades, and this has turned out to be successful for you. Sure. But looking back, what are those differences? What should somebody be looking for in a company that is a sign of success?
I actually asked my instructor that because I was still in school, so I had 2 months left before I graduated. When Coulter brought me back in, and I ended up doing, it worked out perfect. I ended up doing ride-alongs, and then when I graduated, they put me right in a vehicle. But I remember asking my instructor the same thing, and my instructors were actually trying to talk me into going commercial. And I'm like, I don't want to go commercial. That's big equipment. You're stuck in the same place all the time. Working on the same equipment, because it's usually a contract with a building or a company or something like that. So I know I didn't want to do. I'd been stuck in a building doing nursing, and I knew I didn't want that.
Right.
But so I went and talked to the dean, and I'm like, well, so what should I be looking for? And he's like, well, obviously pay, but he said pay isn't everything. You want to look at benefits, and do you have a company vehicle, and do you have this and that, and I started telling him about NER. I'm like, yeah, you get a company vehicle, they do your laundry. And he's like, oh, really? They do the? I said, yeah, they do the laundry. I mean, I said they have like this dart thing. It was the awesomest thing I've ever seen. Like, you go in at the end of the week and you get to throw darts for cash. And he said, really? Yeah. And I was telling, and he said, yeah, you probably shouldn't pass that up.
That's awesome.
I'm sure I'm missing all kinds of details.
Sure.
But I was telling him about my experience, like coming into the meeting, and he's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't pass that up. I would definitely look into that.
That's awesome. And so you come in, you look into it, and how's it been?
It has been life-changing, 100% life-changing. My demeanor, I'm a better husband because of NER. I'm a better dad because of NER.
How? That sounds like I don't know, like that sounds, when you think about like going and being a plumber or an electrician or an HVAC technician, like I don't know how many people would think like, is this going to enhance my family life? Actually, maybe the opposite, because like, the trades and construction,
sure,
they're not always known as being family friendly. So like, you got to explain to me how you're a better husband and father
to explain it. So say your dad came and said, we're going to go do this big work job.
Okay.
Right? We're going to go weed this yard and all this stuff. And you see the work. You're like, oh man, it's going to be a lot of work.
Okay.
Dang, I don't know if I really want to do that. But then the feeling that you get after, and say like you did it as like pro bono, like it was a pro bono type thing, like you did it.
Just service.
The feeling that you get after that, no matter, this is just my opinion.
Sure.
It's coming from me, obviously, but I feel like no matter who you are, you're going to be happy after that. Like you've done something nice for somebody that generates happiness, and your general demeanor changes. Like your hardened shell, or I'll refer it to me, my hardened shell started breaking down, because I had this kind of like, I'd been all over the place seeing all kinds of stuff, and my shell started kind of like diminishing. And it just, I don't know, doing things for people, and we would refer to it as giving them the pickle, right? You've seen that video.
Mm-hmm.
Taking somebody's trash out as I'm leaving their house.
For those listening, they're talking about going the extra mile, like doing the extra mile, doing some extra for them.
Yeah, that was kind of the, I don't know, between and that being like what we're about. So being the culture, that it just, I don't know.
So any hours, deliberate, intentional training of you to not just look at a customer as a dollar sign, but to look at them as someone to be helped,
as an opportunity to do something nice for somebody. And even though they're paying me, if I can get that customer to I'm good at getting people to laugh or joke or lighten up the snare. I mean, coming into their house, usually something's broken, or or they're flooded, but if we can get them to smile, if we can change their day or provide an extra, like, is there anything else I can do? Can I take your trash out for just something kind? That, I don't know.
So the work environment here is such where you can go out, you can be in a technical field, but because of the way you are looking at it from a perspective of like, I'm out helping people, that gives you like positive emotional reinforcement that allows you to then go home and feed that positivity into your relationships there.
Absolutely. You nailed it. And that's exactly what it is. It's that happiness that's generated, and the mentality of like back to a human being from a robot. It's kind of what I feel like happened with me from like my transition from the military, like back into civilian workforce and like going into service and all that stuff. And could that have happened somewhere else? Sure, maybe. Human interaction, I guess, but not on this level.
That's I've never actually thought of it that way, where like either you're your job satisfaction or how you feel about what you're doing, that emotion that you're building up all day, and then you go home and whatever that emotion is, it gets dumped on your family.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Positive or negative.
Yep, absolutely.
So if you're out there and have a bad attitude and it's like building up a bunch of negativity, when you go home, that gets dumped on your family.
Yep.
But like I've never thought of it that way. Thank you for sharing that. Cause like when someone's like, makes me a better, husband and father, it sounds hokey.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's not true, but
well,
like
even the training that I've got here, like applying that to relationships and learning the color code and how like, oh, you know what? I need to step back and evaluate this and use like, I now understand their core drive, like what they're trying to, or what their needs are, or I don't know.
Who'd have thought, like, want a better relationship with your family? Become an HVAC tech. Actually work for
It
any
does sound
hour.
pretty funny. Now I hear you say it. It does sound pretty funny, but it works.
Well, but when you take the time to articulate it, I think it makes total sense. But like, yeah, at first blush, it's like, it almost sounds like propaganda. Like,
Sure.
You're just saying that, but because this is a show that like, any hour, puts the show on, and you work for any hour, so you're going to say positive things.
Sure.
But like that makes a lot of sense, what you're saying. So,
Well, anybody out there that knows me, I tell it how they would, and I'm sure there's people that are going to be, that's sure that's what he'd say, but I tell it how it is, Mike.
well, the show is the show. I just ask the questions.
Yeah.
You guys give the answers, and that's what it is. So, this has been a good conversation. What would you say to someone thinking about getting into the trades?
I just tried to recruit 2 girls the other day, actually, and I kind of just briefly touched on.
What did you say to them? How did you try and recruit them?
I just told them they're hard workers. I'm like, man, you guys are hard workers. You're busting your butt. Have you ever thought about going into the trades? It's so enjoyable. I just told them, it's enjoyable. You get to work. I mean, they're independent out in their own truck, and they were actually delivering to a gas station. So they're offloading product and all that stuff and taking it in. And these 2 girls were sweating. They were getting after it. And I sat there for a second in my truck, just watching them. I'm like, holy cow. So I had to approach them. I'm like, hey, you guys are hard workers. Have you ever thought about getting into the trades or anything? But what I would say to anybody getting into the trades is, it is hard work, but it is the most rewarding hard work. I can't say that I've done ever, but some of the scenarios that I've walked, because you're going in people's homes and you're sometimes it's like, say they forget they had that appointment or whatever, right? You caught them off guard. And they've got things, they're in the midst of life, and you have the opportunity to have an impact on their day and on their life. So I don't know. It's exactly that. It's an opportunity, and it's rewarding above and beyond.
I'm not even going to try and add to it. That was well said. Before we go, any final thoughts, any shout outs you want to give, anything like that?
Nope.
Does your wife still outrank you?
Yep.
All right, we've got a section of the show.
Can we edit that part out? I don't want her to hear that. I'm just kidding.
She knows.
She knows. Yeah, she knows.
Whether you wanted to admit it or not. Anyway, before we go, we've got a section of the show that we call Don't Judge Me. Just some fun. I'm going to throw a bunch of either or scenarios at you, and you just quickly, whatever comes to the top of your head, you just answer. And
all right, be prepared.
That's how we're going to go. Me be prepared? Well,
I tell how it is, Mike.
Well, I mean, they're one-word answers, so
okay.
I don't know that we're going to get like super deep, but I am prepared. I mean, I wrote the questions. I'm more prepared than you are.
All right.
So here we go. You ready?
I'm trained to improvise, adapt, and overcome. I don't know that you're more prepared than me.
Well played, sir. Okay. Spicy or mild?
Spicy.
Water or soda?
Oh, it depends on the day. Water. Always water.
But then you just
Unless
said
you
it
need
depends on the day. You were like, depends on the day. Always water. Like
that's always the smart choice.
all right. Country or pop music?
Country.
Country. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Summer or winter?
Winter.
Sweet or salty?
Can we not have both? That's the essence of life.
You need to
go salty.
Adapt and what is it?
Improvise,
You
adapt,
need-
and
yeah.
overcome.
That's right. So what did you choose?
Salty.
Salty. Here's the thing. Even though I'm giving you either or, like, yes, you can leave here and you can get something sweet and something salty.
Sweet and salty is one of those things you can't have one without the other.
I like...
Or you wouldn't appreciate one without the other.
That's what life's about. You can't appreciate without experiencing the other.
Contrast, yep.
You want to experience more love? Go out and experience more pain. Okay. Football or basketball?
Football.
Indoor or outdoor?
Outdoor.
TV or movies?
Movies.
Jim and Pam or Dwight and Angela?
I don't know the reference. Jim and Pam, Dwight.
You have to know the reference.
That's-
when
that's
I say it, you'll be like,
That's a blank.
really?
Yeah, 100%.
You ever seen The Office?
No. I've heard of it. I haven't watched it.
How old are you?
37.
Like, that doesn't seem possible. You'd never. Okay.
Is it a TV or movie?
That's a TV show.
I'm not a TV guy. As a matter of fact, we don't have TV at my house.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was a show. Like, don't worry about it. Oh, then I'm gonna skip the TV.
Maybe I'll
things.
have to look into it.
You never watched TV like growing up,
Of course. Sure.
and you never saw The Office. The Office never.
We were very limited on, like, if we were caught watching TV for an extended time at my house, we'd be occupied. They're like, oh, okay, you need to be occupied. You're sitting in front of the tube.
You need to be occupied.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
There's productive things that you could be doing other than just sitting idly watching nonsense. That's how I was raised.
Fair
Mike.
enough. Were there any TV shows from growing up that you remember?
Sure. Yeah. I remember specifically, probably the longest back memory that I have is the Andy Griffith Show. And I
Did you
loved
watch
that
on
show.
Nick at Night or something?
No, I loved that show, but when it came on, it meant nap time.
Uh,
When I was a little kid, yeah, I remember that.
wow.
There was a bunch. I
Good
liked
for you.
MacGyver.
I liked
I
MacGyver.
remember watching MacGyver and the
Friends?
A-Team.
Did you ever watch?
I watched Friends a little bit, not that much. That was to the age that I was already trained at that point. Like, if I'm watching TV, I should go do something.
All right. Well, there you go. Parents brainwashed you. Okay. Baths or showers?
Shower.
Pedicure or manicure?
Pedicure.
Okay. Flowers or chocolate?
For me or somebody else?
However you want to take it, bro.
Flowers.
Okay. Pizza or burgers?
Burgers.
Does pineapple have any business being on pizza?
That's a hard question. I love pineapple on pizza,
Then your answer would be yes.
but I don't know where that initiated from. Does it have business being put there? Because I would like pineapple whether it was on pizza or not. I don't know. I'd say yes.
Well, that's like, does bacon belong on a burger? Who first put it on a burger? But, like, does it have business being there? Yes.
Yeah.
Extra, please.
Yeah. Pineapple on pizza.
Yes.
Money.
All right. There you go. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your service. Thanks for sharing your stories with us today. That's the show. And thanks to you for listening. We'll be back next Tuesday with another episode of In the House. If you'd like to know more about Any Hour Services, visit anyhourservices.com. I've been your host, Mike Wilson, and you've been listening to In the House. See ya.